On May 19th of 1953, KELO-TV signed on the air in Sioux Falls. It was South Dakota's first television station. Like most stations at the time, Kelo's staff was mostly comprised of men. That trend continued through the 1980s when Angela Kennecke was first entering the business.
It certainly was an open field to women at the time, but there were still a lot of men in place, and it was still, you kind of had to conform to a man's world.
We had female anchors anchor the morning news and the midday news and the 5 o'clock news. But the 6 and 10, which are sort of the big shows, were a part of what we called the big news back then, and it was for men.
Jane Andrews began working as a reporter for Keloland News in 1983.
Jane.
Steve, at 4:25 this afternoon, the 911...
She covered a variety of beats before becoming the morning show and midday anchor.
And then in about 1988, I was trying to decide after 7 years, what do I do with my life, and approached the news director about did he see an opportunity for a woman as a main anchor at Kelo-TV, and the news director at the time said no, he really didn't see that.
The situation on the national scene at the time wasn't much different. A 1987 study that examined all news programming on ABC, CBS, and NBC found that men reported 73% of news stories. Men also anchored the major network newscasts.
They were doing phenomenally in the ratings, and I think that, you know, it was not so much we don't want a woman on this newscast, it was we're doing so well with these 4 men, why add a woman to that newscast? And so, because I kind of saw my career as a little limiting at that point, I decided to make a change.
Andrews left the station, but not long after, a woman became an anchor on Kelo-TV's 6 o'clock news. She co-anchored the show briefly before Kennecke found herself at the news desk.
In some ways, I got in at the right time. I was only the second woman to ever anchor Keloland News at 10. There was one other, otherwise it had been men up to that point.
Even after securing a spot on the news, it took a while for Kennecke's male counterparts to get used to her presence on the set.
I had just started anchoring the 10, and I was maybe on like my first or second night. And here I was sitting with 3 old guys. You know, Steve Hemmingson was there, and Dave Dedrick was there, and I anchored another show with Doug Lund, and you know, I'm sitting on the set, and Dave Dedrick complimented me on my blouse, and Steve Hemmingson said, "Quit looking at the cheesecake." You know, implying, of course, that I was only there because of how I looked, or I really wasn't qualified. Those kind of things were hard.
But as Kennecke gained more experience and credibility, she encountered fewer flippant comments.
Then it became almost a regular thing. If you had a man at the desk, you had a woman at the desk.
Through the years, more anchoring opportunities became available for female journalists. In fact, a 2008 study by the Radio Television Digital News Association found that women make up more than 56% of news anchors. Katie Jansen is part of the next wave of women anchoring newscasts at the Sioux Falls station.
I've been able to move up in my career pretty quickly, and I've enjoyed it.
Jansen didn't start her career as an anchor, though. Her first job out of school was as a one-man band at WOI in Des Moines, Iowa.
So I started off doing, I think, what everybody does, or at least what everyone should do, carrying my own equipment, shooting my own video, editing my own video, writing my stories, of course, doing everything self-sufficiently. Worked my tail off for 2 years. My motto was, do whatever they tell you to, because I knew that in order to be marketable and to put my best foot forward for my next job, I would need to know how to do everything.
Despite all of the hard work that she put into her career, Jansen recognizes that her success may not have been possible without the work done by her predecessors.
I definitely know that my transition into being an anchor and being successful is so much easier because of them. I would not have been able to be where I am today if it hadn't been for the women who'd gone before me and fought the good fight, and you know, were fired from jobs and stood up for themselves and did things that were considered radical at the time.
More opportunities are opening up for women off camera as well. In fact, Kelo-TV's news director is a woman. Beth Jensen started working as a reporter 14 years ago when men held most management positions at the station.
When I first came to Kelo, you know, almost all the department heads here were men, and when I became executive producer, even just 8 years ago, I think, a lot of meetings I was at, it would be men and me. There were a lot of meetings where I was the only woman in the room. Now, the department head meeting is like half women, half men. A lot of our planning meetings are equally balanced. A lot of our meetings, even like our 1 o'clock producer meeting, it's all women except Dexter.
That's not surprising, given that the RTNDA study found that there are twice as many women news producers as there are men. The report also concluded that the number of women serving as news directors increased dramatically to an all-time high of more than 28% just 3 years later.
You know, you can go across the country and find women in management at all levels of television stations. I think for us locally, it's simply been a matter of longevity and experience, which is something they look for in a manager.
Another factor of the rise of women as leaders in television news is the shift in the medium's target demographic.
So I think it was about the mid to late 80s that we really started to think, you know, how do we appeal to women? What do we need to do? Our audience was predominantly men at that point, I think, and women certainly were a growing audience, but we didn't really focus on them as the people holding the checkbook in a household as much back then as we certainly do now.
Our target audience is women ages 25 to 54, so we're going to do a disproportionate number of stories that affect that group, which is healthcare, which is education, which is working mom issues, daycare, all of that stuff, because that's what women in that age group are interested in.
They're the ones who have the spending power. They're the ones who make a lot of the household decisions when it deals with their children.
During the past 3 decades, women at Keloland TV have made substantial gains toward gender equity, but they still face some double standards, many of which come from outside the workplace.
People feel very comfortable telling you if they don't like something about you.
Anna Peters produces the 5 p.m. news, but started her career as a reporter and anchor.
One time I had a cold and someone sent me a note telling me I sounded like a dying cow. Another time I had pink eye, so I had to wear my glasses, and I got emails immediately telling me they didn't like my glasses.
Peters' experience isn't unique among women in the industry.
They really care about my hair. So, and you can't make it, I mean, it seems like it's the people who don't like your hair that you hear about, you know. I mean, it's unfortunate. I wish people could get beyond, you know, how you look and just listen to what you have to say, or listen, you know, if they critique my reporting or whatever. I mean, I'll take that. I'll listen to that, you know.
Another obstacle working against women today? Age.
Television is a very visual medium. There's still a double standard where men get more credible as they age, they get more distinguished, they get more trustworthy, where women still, I think, just get old. And it's hard because it seems that there's a general public perception that people want their news from 23-year-old women and 50-year-old men. And there's a little bit of a double standard there, a lot of a double standard, actually.
In spite of this, Kennecke is optimistic that women like Katie Couric and Barbara Walters, who've taken on leading roles at older ages, will help change the public's perception.
So hopefully, even in local news, we'll see some of that, where women gain respect and credibility as they get older.
Challenges still lie ahead for women in broadcasting, but this generation of news professionals isn't about to give up.
I'd like to think that television news has become more gender neutral, that we're not always looking for a guy to fill the role of sports director, or you know, a woman to be the weather bunny, so to speak.
It's a lot of work. It is, but it's a lot of work for anyone. I'm a capable person. But it also, looking back on it, is liberating.
I think things are only going to get better for women in broadcasting.
We're lucky that we're at the point where women, you know they can do anything, and if they want to be a stay-at-home mom, or if they want to be a business executive, or if they want to be a reporter or a producer or a garbage truck person, they can do whatever they want. And I feel fortunate that I grew up with that mentality, and I don't even give it a second thought.